Hey guys, it's Caroline with the Engaged Legal Collective, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about something you may or may not know is coming, and that's the GDPR. I read the 50,000 words and 80 pages that compile the GDPR, so you don't have to. What is the GDPR? Well, today I'm going to tell you about it, what it is, how it affects your wedding and event business, and give you a roadmap about how to change some of your practices as to comply with this new set of regulations. You may be thinking, this doesn't apply to me. I'm from America. Caroline, what are you talking about? But if you are doing any business or possibly doing any business with, or even have somebody visiting your website who's from the European Union, you're going to need to make these changes. So before we get ahead of ourselves, what is the GDPR? The GDPR is the European Union's General Data Privacy Regulation, which is going to take effect on May 25th, which is exactly 1 month after this video gets released. It's going to take the place of prior privacy laws that have been kind of scattered about Europe, and also the EU's Privacy Data Protection Directive. So it's going to make everything a lot more uniform for those over the pond. Now, folks that violate the GDPR are going to be fined up to 4% of their annual global turnover, so that's money, or 20 million euros, whichever is more. That's very expensive. I don't have 20 million euros laying around, but if you do and you want to give some of them to me, I would gladly take them. Now, on its face, the GDPR applies to companies that A, either have an establishment in the EU, B, provide goods or services to the EU residents, or C, monitor the behavior of EU residents. With the way marketing works today, with pixel retargeting, tracking, opt-ins, heat maps, contact forms, things like that, basically it means the GDPR applies to you and anyone who offers products to consumers over the web, because people from Europe can access your services and products. So if you're offering any sort of freebie downloads, any sort of online courses, any sort of other information, or if you're collecting any sort of personal data whatsoever, like emails, names, phone numbers, demographic information, the GDPR is going to apply to you. And what does the GDPR even regulate? The GDPR regulates personal data. Now, personal data is any information that relates to a natural person, so that means a human being. Unfortunately, dogs don't count. An identifiable natural person is somebody who can be identified by certain characteristics, or PII, personally identifiable information. If you are collecting any of this information, you are considered a processor under the GDPR. What does that mean? That means essentially if you use data in any way. So since you've collected data and you're processing the data whenever you use it for marketing, retargeting, abandoned cart recovery, sending out an email to your listserv, using that information for marketing materials, that means you fall under the GDPR. One of the things that the GDPR really stresses is that you need to get consent for every time you collect information and use information, and you need to fully inform the consumer that you're collecting information from what it's going to be used for. Consent must be freely given, specific, informed, and unambiguous. Essentially, the drafters of the GDPR want people to give consent just like we want people to give consent if you're having sex. If it's not a hell yeah, it's a hell no. If somebody says no, you can't collect it. If somebody is not in their right mind or maybe doesn't know all the facts about it, you can't collect it. If somebody doesn't give you an enthusiastic yes, you can't collect it. If you get an enthusiastic yes, you're okay and free to go. Now, how do you get that enthusiastic yes? You're not going to get the enthusiastic yes through a pre-ticked checkbox, so like one of those like opt-in boxes. The person has to actively check the box. You're not going to get it through click wrap. Click wrap is like what you read when you update your iTunes. It's like 20 pages long and you just kind of scroll through it and don't read. I don't read it either. Like they're probably asking for my firstborn child or something. That's not a way to get informed, explicit consent. Consider this scenario. You go to a conference, you meet a lot of really cool people. You get all their business cards, exchange information, blah, blah, blah. You take the names on those business cards and painstakingly dump them into your MailChimp or Constant Contact or Sendinblue or ConvertKit, whatever it is, and add them to your email list. This is not technically compliant with GDPR, and it's probably not compliant with US law, CAN spam either. You are violating the GDPR standards here. You have not told the people that you are going to be using their information to send them marketing material, and there's an argument as to whether they even agreed to receive anything from you in the first place. Like, yeah, they gave you their business card. Maybe you just took it. I don't know. Maybe it was on the table. So you actually need consent from those business contacts in order to process their information, which means put it in your system and have it go through those automated procedures. Maybe it's just being added to the system, or maybe it's being zapped one place to another by Zapier. Maybe it's being auto-populated into a kind of spreadsheet. You're processing the information, so you need to tell them how you're using it. Then you also need their information, their consent, their hell yes, to use it for marketing purposes. So you haven't done either of this when you're just collecting people's business cards. I think an approach that people are going to start taking, especially at trade shows or at conferences like this, is to have people to kind of pull up your intake form on your phone or on your iPad and have people punch things in and kind of check that box and say, okay. It seems a little nerdy and very impersonal, but I think that that's going to be the way that things are kind of shifting as to comply with the standards that are being put in place by the European Union. The US can't be far behind because, especially after the whole Facebook thing that's happened recently, I think that there's going to be a lot of legislation that's being pushed through to protect consumers' data. You might as well get ahead of it now and be ready when the United States is really forcing you to comply. Like I said, you probably have to comply anyway because your website isn't specifically excluding people from the European Union. I mean, heck, if you get an inquiry for somebody to send you to the, Irish countryside to photograph a wedding, of course you're going to do it. That means you need to make sure your website is GDPR compliant. Now think about another scenario which might be more common is your freebies, stuff you give away on your website for free to get people's information, to get people on your mailing list. Building your list is really big right now. So everybody's got free stuff they're giving away in exchange for information. Giving people cool content for their info is nothing new, but to comply with the GDPR, you're going to have to make some tweaks. You need to clearly state what information you're gathering, what you're using it for, and give the people some sort of active way to sign up for and opt in to that purpose. You can't just say, hey, download my freebie and get your email and we'll send it to you. That's not going to cut it anymore. You're going to have to say, hey, you're downloading this freebie, but you're also signing up for my listserv. So congratulations, you're going to be on my listserv if you hit OK. That would count as explicit consent. Another final example of this that you need to be aware of is if you are maybe saying that you're collecting information and that you're going to be using it for one purpose, but then you go ahead and use it for a different purpose. And an example of this would be for if you're running a contest or if you are doing a quiz, a marketing kind of based quiz where you get their information and then you send the information by email, but then it also puts them on your email list. Yeah, you might be saying, hey, if you take this quiz, I need your email so I can send it to you. You're saying what you're giving it, what you're collecting the information for. You're sending them the email with the results, right? Or you're sending them an email to tell them if they win the prize or the giveaway. You have to also explicitly say, also by doing this, you're going to be put on my mailing list, just so you know. That is going to give people a heads up as to why and how you are using their data. Basically, what I want you to think about is if you're doing anything that seems like a little bit of a sneaky way to get people's email or get their contact information, or that you don't think they would be like super excited to give you their information in the first place, you need to go back and be more specific. I know that it seems like a lot, but if you are just making sure you're not doing that bait and switch kind of thing where you are collecting info for one thing, maybe using it for another, or switching lists with somebody, you're going to be okay. There's also one other aspect of the GDPR that I want you to be aware of, and that is the right to be forgotten. The right to be forgotten is essentially a privacy rule that says you have the right to contact anyone who is collecting or processing your data and tell them to get rid of it. They have the right to withdraw their consent at any time. Once consent is withdrawn, those people have the right to have their individual data erased. You can no longer use it, you can no longer have it, and their data has to be erased within a reasonable amount of time. You have to have a process in place for deleting all of this consumer data. Now, this seems like a lot of information, and I know that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a plan of attack so you can go through and modify all of your opt-ins and update everything so that you are GDPR compliant. First, what I want you to do is I want you to sit down and list all of the ways that you're collecting data. Do you use Facebook pixels? Do you use Google Analytics? Are you tracking cookies? Are you doing retargeting where you do abandoned cart recovery and send them information that way? Put those in your privacy policy and terms of service, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. What I have done myself is I have put together a really nice flowchart of all the ways that I collect information, kind of my like opt-in process. It's going to look like your funnel essentially, where you're getting information. If you already have your funnel drawn out, this is great because you already know all this info. But if not, you need to make sure you have done that. The second step of your plan of attack is to only collect the data you need. Make sure you're only taking in the information that you're using, because the GDPR is very clear that you can only bring in information that is kind of reasonably related to what you're doing. That means you don't necessarily need someone's social security number if they're buying a digital download. That might seem a little bit extreme, but you get what I'm saying. If they're buying a digital download, maybe you don't need their address or their telephone. Next, I want you to update your privacy policy in terms of service. This is kind of a big sticking point for me in general, because I have seen a lot of people that have a privacy policy in place that's inaccurate. People say, we don't collect your information, we don't share it with third parties, we don't use tracking things on you. And really, with the way marketing's gone, that's pretty untrue. If you are utilizing the Facebook pixel, Google Analytics, Sumo, anything like that, you are actually tracking information. And not only are you tracking information, but it's going to a third party. That third party is, the platform that is taking that data, crunching it, and telling you all of the stats and your data to make better informed pricing decisions, better informed marketing decisions. So you need to go through and redraft that. Now, using that list of all the stuff that you have compiled, all the ways that you're collecting data that I told you to do in number 1, you're going to be able to go through and put that in your terms of service and privacy policy. And not only will it be accurate, but it will be GDPR compliant. Step 4, tell people what you're collecting and don't be sneaky about it. Again, this seems pretty easy, but if you're collecting information, you need to tell people. If something feels like you're kind of like maybe getting their information on the sly, that means you might need to disclose a little bit more information. An example of this would be you are doing a quiz and the results are delivered by email, and maybe you're not explicit that if you are being added, if you are taking the quiz and getting the results by email, you're also being added to the mailing list. You don't have to make it, crazy big and huge in their face, but you do need to disclaim that in the sign up form. So make things easy, don't be sneaky, not hard. 5, utilize double opt-ins. Double opt-ins are actually really annoying, for me at least. If I sign up for something, I really want to be able to just get the information right away, but utilizing a double opt-in is going to be a really great way to show your GDPR compliance. A double opt-in is essentially when a person signs up for something, they submit a form, then they get another form, or they get another like checkbox or some sort of click this link if you want to opt in, that is sent directly to their email. They click the link and they are then part of your mailing list. It's a great way to talk about how it's going to be used and maybe what they can expect from you. And it's another great way to show GDPR compliance. 6, check in with existing members. If you already have people on your list, go through and make sure that they have been added to your list in the correct way. Make sure you haven't just dumped a bunch of business cards or other previous industry contacts onto your list, and that the people on your list actually want to be there. This is also going to be really great for you because you're going to be able to clean out your list. You're going to be able to get rid of the people that don't want to be there and stop paying MailChimp or whoever for all that space for people who may or may not be reading your emails. You might recognize that you're getting a bunch of these lately. You know, I just got one from Instagram this morning. I got one from my Facebook ad girl. Jenna Kutcher sent a few out. So you can see companies huge and small are sending out these lists, these email kind of list cleaner uppers to make sure that the people on their list want to be there and that they were procured in the correct way. People will click the link that, hell yeah, enthusiastic yes, that they want to stay on your mailing list, and they will then be not only GDPR compliant, but they're going to be the people that actually want to hear from you, are reading your stuff, and aren't going to take up valuable time and space on your mailing list. Next is don't randomly add people to your list. Don't just dump people onto your list. This kind of goes hand in hand with the last task I gave you, but it's also good to just reiterate it. I actually moderate a Facebook group with about 4,200 people in it, and we had somebody go through our membership directory and just take everybody's email and dump it in her mailing list. That is really illegal, not only in the United States, but also under GDPR. So don't do that. Not a good thing for you to be doing. Number 8, make sure there's an easy way to unsubscribe from your list once people are on it. As I said earlier, the GDPR requires that it is easy to get off a list as it is to get on the list. So make sure there is that little unsubscribe button on the bottom of your emails, or make sure there's an easy way to get in contact with you if someone wants to utilize their right to be forgotten. If somebody wants to be deleted from everything or any sort of accounts that you may have on your website, if you have some way for them to be involved in a Facebook group, make sure you have a way for them to easily be removed from all of that and for you to delete all of their information. Finally, probably one of the more important things for you to do is to document all of this. Make sure that you have procedures in place to show that you are complying. That way, if anything does happen, you can show, hey, I had all of these ways that I was trying to comply with GDPR. Ways that you can do this are by showing that you have that double opt-in, showing your process for deleting data or unsubscribing, showing that you have essentially disclaimed all of the ways that you're going to be using your data for whether it's every contest, every freebie, all of that. That way, if somebody comes back, you have the documentation to show that you were GDPR compliant. I know this is a lot of information, but I'm going to be offering a free download for you that is GDPR compliant on my website. So go to engagelegal.com/blog and you'll be able to find it there. Have a great rest of the day and let me know if you have any questions. Bye-bye.